Hello and welcome to the Age of Light. My name's Shelley James and it's a very great pleasure to introduce you to Andy Guest from the Lighting Industry Association. Andy, perhaps you could just introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hi, I'm Andy Guest. I work on the technical team at the Lighting Industry Association. I have the job title of Member Services Manager, which really is all encompassing. The Lighting Industry Association is heavily focused on conformity and compliance of product going out onto the marketplace. And hopefully today I can give you an insight into some of those areas that you need to consider.
Great, yes please.
When placing product on the market, there's a host of legislation that needs to be followed. Initially, the first part is to CE mark your product. This is legally required. All products that use electric must have the CE mark applied on them.
Is that right though, Andy? Because, so what does CE stand for? Certificate?
The CE mark is the European visible indication that that product meets the requirements of legislation for placing that product on the market.
Okay. And does that apply to an art sculpture, to a one-off installation? What does that? What's the scope of that?
It's any product that is placed on the market.
Okay.
So if it's designed as an art sculpture, just for display purposes, and then will be taken away afterwards, then you still need to make sure it's safe, it's being used in a public area. But as soon as you sell that product, be it 1 or 1,000, they have to have the CE mark on it demonstrating conformity.
Oh, okay. So now I hope you're going to just talk us through how you go about what that process is.
Yes, certainly. The CE mark covers 4 main areas of legislation: safety, EMC, the ROSH directive, and the energy using products directives. Obviously, the key one is safety, covered under low voltage directive. It is a self-certification directive that you can justify how you feel your product is safe. The main area really is to follow the requirements of the luminaire safety standards. It's a series of standards, BSEN 60598.
So you mentioned that it's self-certifying. So where do I find information about what those standards are?
As anybody working with the LIA will get free access to those standards, but they are available through local libraries. They are a copyright document which can also be purchased from BSI. It sets out the rules and regulations that ensure that the product you place on the market is safe. So if you feel that you can justify by other routes, you are more than entitled to do so.
Okay, so I could, if I've designed I'm currently working with some clients, for example, on adding LED strips to a piece of work that will be sold. So if I can show that I have followed all the standards to make it safe in the low voltage directive, by following by kind of going through the checklist in the documentation and showing how I've proved that on all those measures, then I would qualify for CE marking. Is that correct?
Yes, you can. But you have to remember some of the tests require specialist equipment to undergo those tests.
Okay.
This is where you have to make a sensible judgment sometimes. If it's a one-off product, then full testing is quite destructive. So it may not be financially viable, time viable to undergo that full testing.
Okay.
Where learning and understanding the requirements of the standard means that when you actually create these products, you can build in compliance rather than trying to find the compliance route afterwards.
I see. Okay, so that's a question of downloading those those standards from the Lighting Industry Association website.
If you're a member of the Lighting Industry Association, you have access to those standards. Non-members do have to pay for those standards.
Okay. You also mentioned they were available from the library. And what's that standard is called the Low Voltage Directive, is that correct?
The directive that we apply is Low Voltage Directive, which says you must place a safe product on the market. By complying with the standard, It's a method of demonstrating conformity.
I see. Okay, fine. And then but you mentioned that you ideally you need specialist equipment to fully test all of those that you meet all those standards. So how would you go about? So I presume then that we would contact you to ask you to help us to run those tests. Is that correct?
Certainly, yes. Here at the LIA, we have a full UCAS accredited test facility that tests luminaires, and we can go through the whole process of testing the product from start to finish, including any certification that you might require at the end. And that's particularly important if you're going into international markets outside of the EU.
Okay, so that's for low voltage directive. You need to be aware of the rules before you begin, so that you can, as you say, build in some of that safety and conformity before you begin. And if necessary, we can go to the Lighting Industry Association to have you kind of run your machines over the products. And you said it could be quite destructive. So it sounds like you kind of put so much power through it, for example, that it blows, or I mean, so you do a kind of destruction test?
It could be that we have to drill holes in things, we have to cut things apart, we have to take things apart. We might end up doing flammability tests, which obviously creates burning. It is a destructive route to testing.
Okay,
I liken it to crash testing cars.
Okay, fine. So let's assume that I have followed the rules and built in as much safety as I can. Can I then, you said I can then have the CE mark on the product as somebody who has self-certified? Is that?
Yes,
That's
you can self-declare that the product is safe.
Okay, right.
But remember, there is 4 pieces of legislation that sit under the CE mark. The second piece that you need to consider is the EMC directive. This is unwanted radio emissions from your product that may affect other items in the area, or your product does not get affected by other items that are in the area the same. And we call these emissions an immunity.
Okay, great. And that sounds like
EMC testing is not destructive, but it is very expensive. Typically, an EMC test is going to be about £2,500. So it's generally not always financially viable. Although it's not the ideal route, many people base their EMC conformity on the products that they build into their finished item.
So, for example, if I'm using an LED strip and a transformer, I will look at the EMC conformity on those products, and that's a reason to buy a good quality product, so that I can say that the components of my product are at that standard, and therefore my product will be that standard as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. As I say, it's not the strictly ideal route to go, but we have to take a sensible view sometimes. And this is why it's always important to have compliant components that you manufacture your product out of.
Okay, that's a really good tip. So
I was going to say, and as with LVD, the EMC directive is a self-certification directive.
So what's the third one?
So we have to then consider the ROSH directive. This is a European-wide directive which limits certain chemicals that we are allowed to have in our products.
So what does ROSH stand for?
It's the restriction of hazardous substances.
Okay.
Lead, cadmium, mercury, those sort of items, we limit it to, approximately 1,000 parts per million.
Okay.
Now, it is possible to test products for ROSH, either by using an X-ray type machine, which assesses the chemical makeup, or by full chemical analysis. But again, this is a very costly, destructive method of testing. Most lighting companies will rely on declarations from their suppliers that the components they're buying, the materials that they are buying, are ROSH compliant.
Okay, great. So that's number 3 and number 4.
And the final CE mark directive is the Energy Using Products Directive, or EUP.
Sorry, EUP. Yeah.
EUP or ERP.
Okay.
So it's energy using products or energy related products.
Okay.
It really sets out performance parameters that we get the correct amount of light for the amount of electric that we put in using energy efficient products. Again, this testing can be undertaken, but normally it would require 6,000 hours running, which equates to about 9 months worth of testing. So for the small producer, this is based again on information from suppliers for LED drivers, for the light sources that they use, and those types of elements. So really again is back to this idea of we need to buy good quality components from recognised suppliers to put into our product. So once we've completed those 4 elements, we can now CE mark our product. We need to have a technical file that's got the evidence in that's supporting why we've CE marked our product, what our justification is. And this is going to be a mixture of test reports, data sheets, declarations from suppliers, and finally, you need to issue a declaration of conformity. This is the legal document that you have stated our product meets all the CE mark directives, and the person who signs that declaration takes personal legal responsibility for that product.
Okay, so that's
against it.
So that's quite a serious commitment to make. And that certificate of conformity is available again to download, or where do we find that?
Declarations of conformity, everybody makes their own. You just have to state that the product's in conformity with the European Union harmonisation, the directives you've applied that are applicable to your product, and you might also state any standards you've applied to justify. The LIA does have a template that we let people have to help them when they don't have declarations, to give them a head start on completing these.
And to make sure, I suppose, that everything, that you've got all the bits of information that you need on there.
That's right. But there are a couple of other bits of regulation that we do need to follow as lighting manufacturers. We have the REACH regulation. REACH is about the amount of chemical that's placed on the market. And what the whole essence is when people are placing chemicals on the European market, we need to know about it. And there's a whole list of substances that we call substances of very high concern, SVHCs. If you place over a tonne of a particular chemical on the market, you may need to register with the European Chemicals Agency that you've done that. In reality, it's very hard to actually work with that regulation. Again, as with the ROSH directive, seek declarations from your suppliers that those components and materials that you are purchasing are compliant with the REACH regulation.
Okay, that sounds, yeah, so buying a good quality product from a supplier that you know, or that you can have a relationship, does sound to be absolutely central to staying safe and legal in all of this.
That's right. And if you take an example, you buy a lamp holder from Guest LIA in Birmingham, you will get your ROSH declaration, your REACH declaration, a safety certificate. But you go on Alibaba or the internet and try and source a cheap component, you're not going to be able to get that documentation from these suppliers.
Okay.
A bit of legislation that we really should talk about is the WE directive. When we place product on the market, we have to be responsible for any waste that goes out there. And this isn't just the electrical aspect, it's the complete product. If you place less than 5 tonnes on the market, less than 1 tonne on the market, and register directly with the Environment Agency as a producer, and it costs about £30.
Yeah, there is an interview about that specific topic on this resource So,
but as producers of lighting, you need to make sure that if you're placing product on the market, you are re-registered.
right. Yeah.
So,
and for example, if I work with a number of artists who each place 1 or 2 or perhaps 10 lamps on the market, luminaires per year on the market, would it be possible for them to work through, if I was registered, would it be possible for me to be the supplier, or how would it be possible to kind of group, or does it have to be individual?
It would be possible to group people together, but obviously that means then that you are the person placing the product on the market.
Okay.
So you could be liable for other aspects outside of your control.
That makes a lot of sense too. Absolutely. I was just thinking about ways that very small producers can make all this affordable and manageable, but I completely take your point that taking responsibility for the life cycle of your product is actually a really healthy thing to do.
Yes, and it also gives a little bit of a market advantage that your name appears on the EEE public register, that you can promote and say, look, I am a re-registered company, I am acting responsible, you can go and see me, yeah. On that register, yeah, which sometimes over companies that might not be registered, it may then call into question their conformity in other aspects.
That makes a lot of sense. I suppose in the art market, that idea about kind of responsible manufacture is a really important one. So that's a really good thing to bear in mind, and as you say, quite a good USP.
Yeah. So that's the regulations in a nutshell that affect lighting. We do see a lot of common failings, particularly in the artistic sculptural world. And a lot of this revolves around very simple aspects, such as correctly marking products and supplying correct instructions for assembly or use. The users that are not familiar with the requirements of the standard often need a little bit more help. This is where the LIA helps and promotes these sort of people in these sort of areas and offer training courses that can support people to actually come, attend a training course, understand the requirements of standards, understand how we test products, and you can go away and apply those principles to what you do in your everyday life.
Yes, I've signed up for one of those myself, so I'm looking forward to following up on this conversation in that way. So yes, I agree, and it's a really interesting investment in fact. And once you start looking for products which are and are not safe, or don't meet those standards, you suddenly see that there's quite a lot of stuff out there that really isn't that great. So it's really worth getting the information.
Yes. So just remember, whether you place one product on the market or 1 million, these rules still apply. You are a producer of products, you are placing products on the EU market.
So you mentioned that you could obviously follow a training course, which I'm doing. You also offer consultations. So if an artist wanted to just come and run a product by you and just look at, even if they're getting ready to certify it for themselves, but are wondering whether they can, just want to kind of just double check before they sign that certificate. Is that possible to do?
Yes, it is possible to have a consultation with ourselves. There's quite a few of us that are able to do that for you here. But you need to look at the cost implications. If you're going to do this 4 or 5 times a year, then you're better off joining the LIA and getting all the other benefits that go with it. If it's a one-off piece that you need help with, then it may be financially viable to do that. Or it may work that somebody like yourself, Shelley, sets up a training course where we come and attend and give an overview for people who are working your work and what you're doing.
That sounds like a really great solution, Andy. Thank you very much. I can hardly hear you, and there seems to be driving rain above. So I'm going to end this conversation now with thanks. We're going to, your details will be on the closing page of this website, of this interview. So if anybody wants to get in touch with Andy, then please feel free to do so. Thank you very much indeed, Andy.
Bye.
Bye.